and another one done. So this month we read Kristin Lavransdatter by Sigrid Undset, The Wreath, the first book. I am going to review all 3 books because I have read all 3 books, but this month we read just The Wreath together. Sigrid Undset is unknown to many people. She is a 20th century writer. She is Norwegian. She was Norwegian, and she won the Nobel Prize for Literature for Kristin Lavransdatter, and as well as her for Master of Hestviken. I have not read that one. I would really want to. Sigrid Undset, like I said, was from Norway. She was Norwegian, and she was a very prolific writer. She had always loved writing. She loved stories, and she was always seeking the truth. She was born to atheist parents who taught her to think critically, to think properly, and not just spout out whatever information that teachers would tell her. She was very, very smart. She spoke many languages. I think she spoke Norwegian, English, German, Italian, French, and Icelandic. Her dad would tell her to read to her in Icelandic sagas. It's not that far from Norwegian, apparently, but that was Sigrid Undset. If you look into her life, there are a lot of parallels with Kristin and Sigrid. Kristin loved her dad a lot, and it was the same with Sigrid Undset. And she had a very troubled marriage. It didn't work out. She married a painter who was often not there, who was with another woman at the time that she met him. I encourage you to read about Sigrid Undset because her life is just very interesting in general, and I quite like her. And I love Kristin Lavransdatter. It is my favorite novel. I read it last year for the first time, and I really just wanted, after reading it, I wanted everybody to know about Kristin Lavransdatter, about Sigrid Undset. Hello, and welcome to November. This year is flying by. So if you would like to join me in reading books, you can. This month we are reading Modern Saints, Their Lives and Faces by Anne Bull, and this is book 1. We're going to read book 1. There is a Telegram group that you can join. It's in the description below. There's a Substack link with all the books that I've listed for the year. I know it's November, but you can still sign up so that maybe next year you continue with me. At the end of every month, we discuss the book, and the Telegram group is where we share our insights, favorite passages, motivate each other to read when we're struggling. So if that sounds good to you and you'd like to join, go ahead. It's in the link below. And let's get back to the book review. So the book, it is a trilogy. The first book is called The Wreath, the second book is called The Wife, and the third book is called The Cross. It goes through Kristin's life from when she was a little girl up until the day of her death. The first book deals with her as a young girl up until she gets married. It's set in 14th century Norway, which was the time, the height of Catholicism in Norway, and whatever historical facts that you read in the book actually happened in real life. Kristin is not a real person, or was not a real person, but everything historically that happened in the story surrounding her happened in real life. So kings and princes and these people actually existed. So it starts from when she was young, and she has this ideal upbringing. Her dad is very righteous. Her mom is righteous as well, although she is very misunderstood. She is quite down. Her mother's quite sorrowful just because she lost 3 children before one of them actually lived. Kristin goes through all the different things that a normal human being goes through as you grow up. She goes through her first love, and she goes through preparation for marriage, and she goes through infatuation. The book is very detailed. There are beautiful descriptions of Norway, of the mountains where Kristin lives in Jorengard, And that, when you're reading it, it feels like as if Sigrid Undset is sitting in front of you, telling you the story. Just like in the old days when people would sit around a fire and just listen to someone tell a story. This is what this book feels like whilst you're reading it. So Kristin is a young girl. She grows up to be a young maiden, and she is betrothed to a man named Simon because he's a good match for the family. They have the same rank, and her dad and her mother approve of Simon. He is a righteous man, but Kristin doesn't feel the same attraction to him as she hoped to feel, because she had also a first love that she didn't realize she had. To stall the marriage, she goes to a convent. She tells her parents that she wants to go to a convent to reflect, to pray on this very big decision, and so they allow her to do so. One day she goes out of the convent, and there was a lynx or a tiger that was set out, or a bear, I don't remember. And then there was a man who rescued her named Erland. She and him basically have this coup de foudre, this love at first sight experience, forbidden love. He is much older. In the beginning, when she was talking to her first love, Arne, there are a lot of characters in this book. She said she could never, she was already betrothed to Simon, and so she's told him that she could never betray, her father just for someone that she is in love with. She couldn't do that. But slowly but surely she does with Erland. Erland is much older than her. He has a mistress, or he was with a woman before who was older than him, and he gave her children. And because back in the day where a lot of rules were set, it was very hard for women and children who were illegitimate children to have a normal life, and they were looked badly upon. But she falls in love with Erland, and he falls in love with her, and they try to hide this from her family as long as possible. And that's where everything starts to go a little crazy. The second book is called The Wife. This goes through her life as a wife with Erland in Huseby. So she moves away from her parents. She has children. Erland is finally slowly but surely climbing up the career ladder. Because of his personality, that gets him into a lot of trouble, and because of his past, that also gets him into a lot of trouble. This book deals with marriage, the difficulties, the joys, the sorrows. It's all about that, and how we drag each other down or we bring each other up, how the husband and the wife bring each other down or bring each other up. And it continues with the forbidden love, because Simon, the one who she was betrothed to, still loves Kristin and still protects her. And the third book, The Cross, Kristin, we find her at the end of her life. Her sons have grown up. She had seven sons, and her sons have grown up. They've left the nest, and it's her reflecting through her life and seeing the fruits of her sin in full view. It's a big part of this book, the whole thing, how our actions, our sins are not just our own, and how it affects everybody we know. She's older, she's near the end of her life, and she has this feeling of being unwanted, useless towards the end. Sons have gone off, another was married and kind of followed the same route that she and Erland had followed, and she ends up back into a convent at the end. But I don't want to spoil the story. The whole book deals with sin and how our sins affect those we love the most. An interesting thing about this too is that it is set in medieval Norway, but at that time you still had some paganism going on. It was hard to remove that from the culture. There are moments where some people fall into pagan practices again, and it's the struggle between my will and God's will. The characters are so real. And yes, the principal character is Kristin, but you get to know every single person, and not one is as evil as they seem, nor as good as they seem. Everyone is human. One example is when she was younger, she found that her mom was so sad all the time and just so negative. And as you read, you understand why she is like that. And the same with Lavrans, who is her dad, so Lavransdatter, daughter of Lavrans. The same with Simon, the same with Erland. In the beginning, I remember thinking about Erland like, oh my goodness, what a what a fool. But there are certain parts, especially in the wife, where he does have good qualities, and in the cross. And then you grow to love him as well. There are characters that you think in the beginning like, oh, they're awful, they're bad, but no, they're just as good as the other ones, and they remind you of yourself. Sigrid Undset was very good at writing about men and women equally. Kristin Lavransdatter is not a book for women. It is a book for everyone. Because in Kristin Lavransdatter, we go from her, from when she was a child up until she dies, you get to know her as a human person, and you feel like she is a real person. Reading this book, I remember the first time I read The Wreath, I read it in 3 days. It's the most, I would say the most romantic out of all the three. The second one is psychological, about marriage, and the third one is religious in nature. But I remember reading it the first time, all three of them, and you go through this roller coaster, an actual roller coaster. You're reading it and you feel this ascent. Everything is okay, everything is fine, but you can kind of picture, you can see in the corner that something bad is about to happen, and then all of a sudden it goes down. You go to extreme moments of pure bliss, and then in the next page it just goes down. But it's much like life. I love that nothing is sugar-coated in this story. I love that even though it's set in medieval Norway, it feels timeless. It is a story that happens today. It is the battle of our will against God's will. Kristin Lavransdatter is like what Dostoevsky has done to male characters. Sigrid Undset did that to a female character. She is smart, she is beautiful, but she is so flawed. And you're reading and you're just thinking, Kristin, what the heck? What are you doing? And then after thinking that, you think to yourself, well, I made those same decisions. I did that. And you realize too how people that seem like they shouldn't be together, you understand why they are completely together. The thing with Kristin and Erland and Lavrans and Ranfrid, her dad and her mom. You understand, you get to know these people so deeply. I could go on about Kristin Lavransdatter and about Sigrid Undset. I love them so much. But tell me what you thought. Have you read it? Do you want to read it? It is very long, but I promise you it's worth every single page. It has everything in it. It has romance, it has adventure, it has fantasy. Everything is in here, but it seems so real. I just wish everybody knew about Sigrid Undset. She won the Nobel Prize for Literature for Kristin Lavransdatter. She is worth the read, and she is worth taking the time to be with, because like I can't wait to reread it again. That's how much I love these books. What's fascinating about Sigrid Undset is that when she wrote this, she wasn't actually officially Catholic. And when you read it, it's full of Catholic imagery, because Norway at that time in the 14th century was so Catholic. Everything, they celebrated all the feast days, they had all the decor, and it's just so beautiful to read, and you can see everything, and that is so wonderful to read in a story, to actually be transported out of where you are, you know, like in your living room or wherever you're reading, into this world. Because I don't know much about Norway, but from reading this, I do now, at least medieval Norway. And I wish there were more. Maybe you have suggestions, but I wish there were more books like this, because for me, as someone who struggles with learning about history, this is the way that I prefer learning it. She gives you so much detail. There are moments where she describes someone spinning wool, or Kristin is sewing by hand her dress, mending Erland's tights and whatever it is. It's so visual. But yeah, I think, like I said, I can keep going, but I think I will leave it at that. I urge you to read it. I hope you enjoy. Let me know what you thought about Kristin Lavransdatter. I can just keep talking about it. I'm gonna stop now, and I shall see you in the next one.